Truck Talk, brought to you by eTruckBiz.
Hi everyone, Ben Wheel welcoming you and reminding you that this episode of Truck Talk is not endorsed, sponsored, approved, or otherwise affiliated with Fedex Ground or any company other than eTruckBiz. Joining us today is Todd Seidel, owner of Cedar Canyon Enterprises, which is the name of his Fedex Ground contracting business. Todd has a fleet of last-mile delivery trucks and ensures that his managers and drivers get the job done 7 days a week. We invited Todd to be today's guest because he was an outstanding participant in our training seminars held earlier this year. And right now is a significant moment for eTruckBiz because we recently announced our Transportation Business Academy as the newest addition to our family of eTruckBiz companies. The Academy is designed to make it easier to own or operate a successful transportation company and will begin offering classes in 2022. So let's talk. Todd, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You and I met in June of this year when you attended our training seminar. So tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you came to find eTruckBiz.
Prior to actually owning and operating FedEx ground contracting business, I really had no experience whatsoever in logistics or in FedEx, anything to do with last mile delivery. A friend of mine had discussed getting into the FedEx contracting business a few years ago. I started looking at the operations, and the model really appealed to me. I thought there was a lot of potential in the way that you can scale the business, and it just had a lot of really good appeal. So I started looking at it and really was trying to find the right fit and the right entrance into the market. And there's contracting operations that are for sale on an ongoing basis, but it's difficult to find that right fit. And for me, I had some criteria that I needed met before I was going to get into the market. And one of the people that I was talking with had been through the course before and had recommended it very highly. So I looked into the e-truck course in Huntsville and thought that it would be a great addition to my education and learning about contracting and getting up to speed. And so that's how I found the course.
Well, you mentioned the word education. I think it's fascinating what you did and what your education is. If you don't mind telling our listeners, what is your level of education? I
am a physician by education. I'm an anesthesiologist, board certified for, almost 20 years now. And my practice is located in Northeast Indiana. I do a little bit of everything as far as anesthesia goes and taking care of patients that are having surgeries. But, because of that, I've been educated for pretty much my entire life, and I've gone through countless hours of classroom education, continuing education, of course, my primary schooling. So I've had a chance to see and evaluate multiple different educational opportunities over the years. As a side note, I'm a woodworker, and I've had a chance to even attend woodworking classes, so even beyond medicine. So I attended the courses down in Huntsville, and I had the opportunity to actually compare those to what I had been through in the past. And, I'll tell you that the level, the depth of knowledge, the depth of information that we learned, that we went through, it far exceeded anything that I was expecting. And it was literally like drinking from a fire hose when we were down there. But the nice thing about that is that I always prefer to train and educate myself with information that's well above my head, that I maybe don't understand everything, because I've always found that I can take bits and pieces of the information that's there and I can utilize what I want, and maybe not understand or utilize everything in the moment, but at some point I'll get a chance to actually incorporate that information into some sort of future plan or future scenario that I may get myself into.
Going back to the anesthesiology training, the biggest thing is you can't make a mistake. You just can't. People's lives in the balance. And this contracting is not life-endangering other than safety, but a big reason why a lot of new owners, such as yourself, choose to attend our courses is because they don't want to make the mistakes that others that have come before them have made. So as best as we could, we tried to prevent mistakes, but What are some things that you've learned being a new owner that another listener who may be thinking about getting into ownership could learn from, and maybe some pitfalls they could avoid? So if you're speaking to other potential owners, what would you like to tell them about avoiding mistakes as a startup in this business?
It's really interesting. A lot of the things that I heard have come true, and a lot of the warnings, hey, watch out for this, or these pitfalls might happen. Fascinating that probably, I heard a lot of things down there about you should consider this or watch out for this, and probably 95% of those things have actually happened. Everything from getting into accidents to people leaving to other contractors trying to steal your employees. There's so many things that I was warned about and told about in the conferences. A lot of those things came true. So I think from just having no background whatsoever in FedEx and trying to understand how things work, having all of these sort of red flags pointed out to me where people with prior experience had said, hey, when you become a new owner, you need to be careful of this, this, and this. Having all that information was extremely helpful, because most of it, if not all of it, has come true so far. As far as startup pitfalls, I think one of the biggest maybe surprises or things that I have seen that I was not really prepared for was the speed, or I should say the lack of speed, at which certain things happen. And I'll give you an example. In medicine in the hospital, I was used to things happening at a very brisk pace. If we needed something changed or something done, it was literally only a matter of minutes or potentially hours. If it was policy, maybe a couple days. But things happen very, very, very briskly. And in the FedEx world, it seems like things come to a grinding halt all the time, trying to get your trucks approved, trying to get people through the background check system and First Advantage. There's so many roadblocks, and I wasn't prepared for that at all, the slowness of things, I guess. So that's been probably the biggest surprise to me, is just how slow things can move sometimes. But it's a fast-paced terminal, and there's a lot of things that happen on a fast basis. I just wasn't ready for the slowness, I think.
That's an interesting observation, and I guess a comparison that not many get to see. It's not comparing a hospital to a terminal, but I can understand where you're coming from. So I'm sure that was an eye-opener. So getting back to the training like we're talking about, what factors played into the decision whether or not to attend training? Because, can't require new owners to go through training. A lot of people choose not to attend training, but it is a big investment. So what do you think plays into most people's decisions or your decision? Cost, time, travel, all the above?
For me, the course was really designed with working people in mind. It was placed in a location that's easy to get to. I flew out of my hometown within, I think we were 15 minutes from the facility the airport was. The first class on Monday morning starts a little bit later, and the class ends Friday afternoon a little bit earlier, so you have travel time that you can get to the first meeting and then leave after the last meeting and still make it back home at a decent time. The cost was very reasonable for the education that you're getting during the conference. So I'd say all those factors were certainly important to me. They all seemed to play a role, and the meeting was well thought out in the flow of it, the structure, and the timing of it.
What did you said it was meaningful and helpful? Talk to the listeners a little bit about maybe the new owner seminar that you went to and what you gained from that.
This, again, I don't know if everyone is going to be like me as far as having absolutely no background in FedEx whatsoever. But I really didn't have any information. I had very, very little information about how FedEx operates as far as maybe the more specific nuances of day-to-day operations. And so for me, just getting baptized in the terminology of FedEx, understanding the terms, understanding the structure of the terminal and the flow of things, that was all really important. And so part of the reason I wanted to go to the course was just to get familiarized with all of these terms that get thrown around an awful lot and be comfortable using them on a regular basis, on a daily basis. I think when I maybe first attended the conference, I kind of had an understanding about what an AO versus a BC is, and now I'm actually an AO myself with 2 BCs. Kind of a striking contrast for sure. The new owner conference kind of gives you that broad sort of 10,000-foot view of what you might want to think about before you get into the business, different questions you should maybe ask yourself, how you see your business structured, what sort of things you're looking to gain out of the business. Probably the number one thing I took away from the new owner course was to always recruit, and I had never really thought about that before, but that was mentioned over and over and over again, to always be recruiting, and I cannot tell you how important that was to hear that, because I have done nothing but recruit ever since I started on day one, and it has been a lifesaver for us.
Affirmation of what we've been saying. Thanks for saying that. What about the leadership? Is there one thing that stands out to you from the leadership seminar that you attended?
From the leadership aspect, I wouldn't say there was necessarily one thing. There was a lot of great information that came out of that, and in particular, looking at different leadership styles and looking at ways to approach the business as a leader and think about yourself in that leadership type role. Those were all really important things to hear and to try and understand and try and get a good grasp of before take the keys that first day and open the door and say, here I am, I'm the new owner. Now what do I do?
It's a daunting thing to think about if you don't have any kind of training or have attended any kind of classes to learn about it. So what about any thoughts about, you were at the engineering seminar as well?
I was there all 5 days, and there was so much great information that happened in each one of the segments of the seminars. As far as engineering goes, I think we talked an awful lot about numbers, and this really is a numbers business with lots of numbers being thrown at you all the time. But it really comes down to a numbers game in the end, as far as mathematical analysis and looking at, how many packages are coming in, how many drivers do you have, how many trucks do you have, how many hours in the day are there. It's all a mathematical formula on how to plug it all in, make it work, and try to walk away at the end of the day being a profitable business. So I think, from an engineering standpoint, there was just some great information out there that we learned and we talked about. Regarding the way that you want to structure your business, put your drivers on the road, and more importantly, a lot of the metrics that you, when you're out there doing this, running one of these businesses, it's important to know where you stand in regards to maybe national averages or even your own profitability. And if you don't have something that you can measure, it's really difficult to make changes or to understand if you're doing something right or doing something wrong. And so I think just having that grasp of the metrics that can be used in the business to measure your growth and measure where you are, it's allowed us to expand in our own business. And really, we've seen some crazy growth, but we're not doing it in such a way that it's irresponsible or reckless. We're trying to use it and use our growth in a measured fashion, and we use a lot of these metrics that we learned in the course to try and gauge our success.
Interesting. Let's talk about the metrics a little bit. Is there one that you say that you would look at every day, every morning, every evening, anything like that? Is there a metric that stands out to relying on the most?
Yeah, for sure. So there's one metric in particular that we use on a regular, if not hourly basis, and that is our stops per on-road hour. SPORH is what we use, so stops per on-road hour. So that is a metric that I picked up while attending the course, and basically what it does is it tells you how efficient your driver is doing, and there's some caveats to the metric, but it allows you to compare a route and say, okay, why is this driver out later than they should be? Or I can't believe this driver's made it back already. I wonder what their SPOR was when they get back. So that in particular is one metric that's been a huge lifesaver for us as far as trying to figure out our efficiency in the business.
We stress recruiting a lot, which I'm glad stuck with you, and stops per on-road hour. That's super. You were an excellent student. I'm glad to hear that you've implemented that back with your VCs and use that hourly. Tell our listeners, Todd, based on some of the engineering things that you learned in the class, you are dispatching trucks now. You're learning it as you go, and you're working with your managers. Talk to our listeners a little bit about how you are doing your dispatches now in the morning based on some of the information that you learned in the seminars.
Well, I'd say one thing that we do is we do not have static dispatching. Our dispatching is very, very dynamic, and we may have, Saturday may have 7 routes dispatched, Sunday may have 6, Monday may have 8, Tuesday may have 10, and so we fluctuate based on volume, and that was definitely something I learned in the class, was to adjust your dispatching based on your volumes, and again, this is all derived from metrics that you can gather from the classes. Having dynamic dispatching is probably something that was not intuitive to me prior to taking the class.
So speaking of the new investors, and you were one yourself not too long ago, what kind of training do you think that others should consider if they're thinking about getting into this business? Because, you know, if they were to buy a franchise, there would be a lot of franchise training. But for somebody who doesn't have any experience, you didn't have any transportation experience, how involved should a new owner expect to be in the first few months, and, you know, about their own involvement in this business? What have you learned about that?
So FedEx assumes that on day one you know what you're doing and that you do not need any hand-holding. Now, that is not to say that they will not help you, and they will not give you, they don't really give you advice per se, but they try to be helpful to you if you have needs. They expect you to be able to run everything right from day one without any other involvement from them. So all the training, everything that you do, everything that you bring to the business is pretty much on you and only you. Unless you're very comfortable in that role, I would suggest seeking training elsewhere or in some other place. And there's a lot of resources available. The e-truck class is, I think, for the volume of material that you get in such a short time span, is probably the best use of your time, your money, and your resources. In addition to that, you can certainly do online training and find blogs and find different things to read, but there's nothing like sitting in a classroom with other people and discussing things as they come up, and having experts right there at your fingertips to be able to ask them questions. The amount of experience in the room in these classes has got to be in the hundreds of years when you combine everyone's experience. And even the people taking the class, a lot of them were experienced ECs and AOs. They had years of prior knowledge and information experience, and I think even talking with them, it was extremely useful and helpful.
What's your biggest challenge right now at this moment in time as a FedEx ground contractor?
Honestly, trying to figure out how we want to grow and which direction. We have so many opportunities all around us that we have to sort of be selective on how we want to approach things. It's been really great and fun trying to get control of everything in a good way. The growth has been pretty remarkable. So probably the just understanding which direction we want to take the company has been the biggest challenge at this point, but in a good way, I guess, not in a bad way.
When you talk about growth, are you talking about within your local area or into other terminals? Where are you thinking the growth is? Are you targeting, or what areas are you targeting for growth?
Well, both. We're targeting growing inside of our own terminal, and then also growing into other terminals. We're currently involved with discussions in both realms, trying to figure out exactly how we want to proceed moving forward. Tell me this, if there was one big takeaway from your educational experience with us, what would you say that was? The one thing that many of us struggle with is time management, and we're required to wear many hats at one time and try to figure out how to manage all of our time and all of our responsibilities. And the one thing that e-truck really taught me was a lot of the resources that were available to me through e-truck, and for instance, payroll processing. And that's a huge time saver for me. I don't have to do any of my own payroll processing. E-truck's able to do that for me. There's consulting available. There are contract negotiation people that are ready and willing to negotiate your contract for you, and the list goes on and on, all these different resources that you can utilize that will allow you to free up your time and do other things and that you can devote to your business. So I think just knowing that those resources are available was worth the course in itself.
All right, so I appreciate you spending time with us today because I know you're busy. It's a busy time of year for ground contractors. Let's end on a positive question. Tell listeners, what's your favorite aspect about being a FedEx ground contractor?
My favorite aspect, I think, is the variety. It's every day is different. No 2 days are the same. It has a lot of moving parts all the time. And I was trying to explain to someone that getting up to speed in this business is like trying to learn how to ride a bike and build it at the same time. And so it's just been fun getting to do another completely different thing in my life that I haven't done previously. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
I like that analogy. May you borrow that sometime if you don't mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
Trying to learn to ride a bike while you're building it at the same time.
That's about as close as you can get. That and drinking from a fire hose. It's the amount of volume of information that comes at you is just, it's mind-boggling when you take a step back and you think about how much you've learned in such a brief period of time. And and FedEx has its own language too. There's countless abbreviations, wording for everything. So trying to learn all that at the same time has been a challenge, but again, it's been fun.
Well, again, thank you so much for being our guest today. We appreciate you having it on. I think the listeners have learned a lot, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ben. Great talking with you.
Great talking to you, too. To our listeners, please join us for future episodes of Truck Talk.